So next we're going to hear from Dr. Daniel Ragsdale, and I'm going to tell you he's so excited about what he wants to talk to you about that he's been over here shortening his bio introduction to buy himself some more time. So I have a very short intro for him. So as the Acting Director for Defense Research and Engineering for Modernization, Dr. Ragsdale is responsible for unifying and advancing the investment and capability analysis of the Pentagon's modernization priorities outlined in the National Defense Strategy. He has oversight of the 11 principal directors assigned to those modernization portfolios and their roadmaps, the comprehensive strategies to manage, provide oversight, and guide choices for 5G, artificial intelligence, autonomy, biotechnology, cyber, directed energy, fully networked command, control, and communications, hypersonics, microelectronics, quantum science, and space. And just saying that list makes me tired, so I'm sure that's a big job. All right, Dr. Ragsdale.
Thank you so much. Please. Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Stephanie. And I want to express my sincere gratitude to you and for your group that has pulled this extraordinary event together under as we can tell, difficult circumstances. And I'm especially captivated by the theme. I think you had me at hello with the theme. You reached out to me by email a few weeks ago, a few months ago even. And I heard the theme and I said, I could not imagine a better theme than Imagining Tomorrow. And just for the record, this is a great honor and privilege for me. I want to make sure that's clear to the small group we have here and those that we have online. I see this is really a great privilege. As we look at and I also want to highlight just a couple things. So despite my many years on the platform as a professor with many students, I frequently would write, you didn't answer the question on exam. So I'm not going to answer the question that you proposed. So I'm admitting that to this group and all. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I felt like I wanted to go back to the core reason why we have Engineers Week. It is to call attention to and to celebrate the achievements of those that have came before us. So I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm going to highlight some very specific individuals that many of them I've known about for years. Some of them I've discovered in just the past few days and weeks. That truly, those true giants, those whose shoulders we all stand on, I'm going to call them out. I'm also going to talk briefly about your theme, talk a little bit about the role that we in the Defense Research and Engineering for Modernization Office, the kind of things we do and what inspires our efforts. I'm going to celebrate those great titans. And then I want to speak to the community of scientists, technologists, and engineers, and the important role that I see that we all know that you have as we move forward. I'm also going to allude to someone's words that from Maya Angelou, so distinguished poet laureate. She once said that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you make them feel. So as we look at this inspiring theme and this inspiring event, and this inspiring week for that matter, if you are inspired, if you bring a greater sense of urgency to what you're doing, if you have a heightened sense of purpose, and if we enliven your spirit in any way, then we've done our jobs. The challenges are great. We know that. We find ourselves in very difficult circumstances with this conflation of many crises at one time. We also find ourselves in a time when we can anticipate diminished resources. We also find ourselves in a time where we have great power competitors that are significantly investing in the development of military capabilities that could put at risk the military capabilities that we bring to bear. So that theme about imagining tomorrow, I think I'd like to quote yet another profoundly influential person in my life, Alan Kay, who once said, as we look to the future, it's difficult to forecast. So he said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. For engineers, to build it, to design it. Because we have that within our grasp. We don't have to just accept the future as it comes to us. As Terry alluded to in his remarks, we get to envision a future tomorrow. And to me, I couldn't think of a more inspirational thing with respect to the degree of which that scientists, technologists, and engineers have that power. And I'm going to speak to that topic in a moment, but I did, as I mentioned before, I want to honor, I want to commemorate, I want to celebrate those great men and women that preceded us, that have served as scientists, technologists, and engineers in the Department of Defense, or for that matter, in the departments that preceded the Department of Defense, the Department of War and the Department of Navy. They were, in Isaac Newton's words, they were those giants whose shoulders we stand upon and we can see, in allowing us to see further. That is what we're able to do because of those who preceded us. I mentioned I was going to speak briefly about the organization I have the privilege to serve as the acting director for. So we have an unofficial motto in the Defense Research and Engineering for Modernization Office that our role is to illuminate the boundaries of the realm of the possible, to profoundly influence and inform the development of novel capabilities and the novel concepts and the capabilities that will enable them. We see this as an enlivening and inspiring goal to help the warfighting community to see what's in the realm of the possible, to see those potential futures, those potential capabilities that could be developed as a result of the integration of increasingly mature technologies. We've already read off the list. You know that it's a rather broad list of very important high-priority technology areas, and each of those areas is led by a principal director. These principal directors are senior officials. They're well-respected in their communities. They're thought leaders, and they're charged with the awesome responsibility of leading and coordinating the Department of Defense research and engineering activities in their respective areas. It's a pretty significant role. We're blessed beyond measure, all of us, because we've attracted a group of very talented subject matter experts who not only bring their technical expertise to bear, but they have an appreciation for our department's mission. And it is at the confluence of those thoughts that they're going to be able to best advise the senior leaders and others about future concepts. Now, I mentioned I was going to highlight some of those individuals who preceded us. And Terry mentioned his connection to the Navy, and of course, I have a strong connection to the Army. So I will start with Thaddeus Kosciuszko. Kosciuszko was a Polish-Lithuanian patriot who we were so fortunate that he decided to lend his talents to the revolutionary forces at the time. He came to the United States, and he was instrumental in both developing an entirely new concept for how to defend a piece of ground on the Hudson, West Point. And it was this innovative design that he not only designed, developed, and oversaw the construction of, that was so formidable that the British never challenged it. And to put that in context, if the British were able to take West Point during that critical time, they would have controlled that line of communication, which was the Hudson River. They would have split our forces. And it is very likely that they would have prevailed. And as one of my colleagues once stated, if that was to have happened, we'd all be speaking English today. Boom, boom. Thank you, Stephanie. Kidding aside, George Washington himself said that maintaining West Point, keeping control of that critical line of communication was the key to the revolution. We have Thaddeus to thank for that. Another individual, fast forward a little bit from that period, certainly skipping almost over the entire 19th century, with the exception of Major Walter Reed, who we know at the tail end of the 19th century, was instrumental in developing a countermeasures or addressing the issue of yellow fever. Killed hundreds of thousands of people. He's credited with saving many hundreds of thousands of lives, potentially millions of lives, by virtue of the science that he did as an Army major. Here's a name that everyone knows, the next hero in our pantheon of heroes, Thomas Edison. Arguably the greatest inventor of all time, the greatest empirical scientist of all time. Inarguable almost. Many people don't realize, but he contributed his expertise during World War I. He was called by the Secretary of the Navy to serve as the head of the Naval Consulting Board. They stood it up during the First World War. They were able to rapidly, speaking to even present-day challenges, rapidly develop capabilities based upon technologies available at the time that were consequential in the First World War. It was at Edison's instigation that the Naval Research Lab, which we all know well, as the first ever U.S. government-sponsored scientific R&D lab was created. It was in 1923. It was at Edison's behest. Probably my favorite of this list of folks that I wanted to bring to your attention, another name you also know, but you may not know the full details, and that's General Jimmy Doolittle. Most of us have heard of Doolittle's raid, that extraordinary, symbolic mission during a dark period in the Second World War, where he led B-24 bombers on a raid. Most of them did not make it. Many of them were captured, all of them, including Jimmy Doolittle himself. But that raid was, in many people's mind, the turning point of the Second World War in the Pacific. He was a Medal of Honor winner for that, which there's not, they don't give those out to anybody, as we well know. He was a 4-star general. He commanded many air forces, so he was certainly an extraordinary military officer. But he was also a great engineer. In the mid-20s, he received the first ever PhD in aeronautical engineering from MIT. He used that knowledge throughout the rest of his career. He was not just a dumb stick jockey. He used that information to ensure that, for example, high-octane fuel was incorporated into the future fighters and bombers. He was the president of the Aeronautical Engineering Institute. He also, if I was introduced to a term recently, instrument flight. What that really means, for those that it means you're flying without any. He flew a flight in 1926 with a canopy completely covered, could not see out of the canopy. He took off, he circled the airfield and landed, first time ever. He also set many airspeed records, so he was very accomplished in that regard. But he was an engineer at his core, and he brought that expertise to bear throughout his career. And just one other cool fact about Jimmy Doolittle, in the movie 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, he was played by none other than Spencer Tracy, so he has that going for him. I believe that somebody's going to talk to Vannevar Bush in the subsequent, so I'm not going to mention him, other than he was a civilian scientist. He headed the Office of Science Research and Development during the war, the Second World War. Much of the important R&D that was done at the behest of that organization, including radar, for example. And he was one of the early administrators of the Manhattan Project. Speaking of which, another individual, which many of you well know, is Leslie Groves, Lieutenant General Leslie Groves. He headed up the Manhattan Project. He picked up the baton from Bush. And we all know the results, the important results that came out of that important high risk and aggressive research program that was obviously very consequential. He was also, many don't know this, many in the room probably do, he oversaw the construction of this building. So this extraordinary, epic engineering achievement, building this building, they broke ground, and within a year, they had people occupying the first wing. Now, I want to highlight that the day that they broke ground for this facility was September 11th, 1941. A day that is, of course, of significance to all of us in this country and certainly those in this building. 60 years to the day, due to the terrorist attack that took place in our nation, this building that he helped construct came under attack, which, as it turns out, calls out yet another great engineer, the Pentagon Renovation Program Manager, that headed the Operation Phoenix, which took the damaged building, the burning hulk in some respects that one of the wings of the Pentagon was, and effectively resurrected that. And within a year, much like the building, the original building itself, the occupants were able, for that damaged wing, were able to move back into their office within a year of that strike. So we owe a great debt of gratitude to Lee Every. Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, an extraordinary woman that we could spend the rest of the day talking about her contributions and what she's done. She tried to enlist in the Navy in the Second World War. She was turned down due to her age, her advanced age. She was all of 32. She was able to enter the Naval Reserves. And just to give you an appreciation for how long she served, she retired as a commander from the reserves at the age of 60. She was almost immediately recalled. She became a Navy captain at the age of 67. And wait for it, she became a rear admiral at the age of 77. For those of you that don't have a deep knowledge of some of the things she did, she was instrumental in the development of computing systems. She was involved in some of the early work that led to the UNIVAC computer. She developed the first one-pass compiler. She was Grandma COBOL, so the COBOL programming language, which is still here today. She helped develop that, and that was the first time they were able to enter instructions in something that looked something like English. She also was part of the helping to introduce this term debugging into our lexicon. And the story behind that is literally they found a moth in a relay that prevented the system from operating effectively. They removed it, they preserved it, taped it to the logbook. And ever since, we've been talking about debugging programs and finding bugs in programs due to her interesting contribution. She also said this, and I think it very much is applicable to this group, and I do want to highlight this. When asked what the most important thing she did, she said, other than building the compiler, it was training young people. So let that be a challenge to all of us that we should attempt to do the same thing. John Licklider, DARPA IPTO program manager, was instrumental in bringing ARPANET into existence. And we know that that was a precursor of the internet and all the difference and change that has brought about in our lives. And finally, John Boyd. Colonel John Boyd was, many of us that have been to the military instruction, as a matter of fact, almost wherever you go, you hear about Boyd's OODA loops, right? Observe, orient, decide, act. That has profoundly influenced the way to the present day, we look at some of the tasks before us. But he was also a pioneer engineering maneuverability theorist. His theories helped inform the later development of the F-18 and the F-16. And just as an aside, my son, Major Reed Ragsdale, is a F-16 pilot flying missions in Afghanistan today. So in some small way, I feel almost a direct connection to John Boyd. He also said he was deeply passionate. I got a kick out of this. They referred to him as the Mad Major when he was a field grade officer, and also Genghis John. And here's another quote I just love. There are only so many ulcers in the world, and it's your job to see that other people get them. So let that be a challenge for us. So, as sensitive to the time, I want to talk a little bit about today. We know that we have the best led, the best trained and the best equipped military the world has ever seen. And all of you have contributed to that in one way or another. It's our challenge to maintain that going into the future. And as I mentioned earlier, we find ourselves with competitors that are investing heavily in all of the same technologies that we've talked about and possibly others. Paraphrasing our new Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Lloyd Austin, we have to focus, as we always have and always should, on diplomacy first. We've got to have credible deterrence. That credible deterrence will allow for our diplomats to speak and negotiate with strength. And if that deterrence fails, of course, we need to be able to be prepared to provide necessary force application. But let there be no doubt in our mind, deterrence without strength might fail in the future, particularly if our great power competitors possess military capabilities that outstrip the United States of America. Sadly, this is an unimaginable future, and that's the challenge before us. The challenge before us and the critical role that you will all play in ensuring that we can maintain that edge, that we can surpass the capabilities of our great power competitors. But we can't simply endeavor to spend more. We can't endeavor to out-hire our adversary, because both of those are going to almost certainly be not tenable. So instead, we must outthink, we must outcreate, we must out-innovate, we must out-transform. In short, we must out-compete our great power competitors. And thankfully, we all know this in our hearts. This is a competition we can win. We have the talent, we have the drive, the expertise, the motivation, the sense of purpose. We have the resources, we have the facilities, and we have the support of elected and senior official leaders. With all of that, we have what we need to win this competition. And if you'd allow me to tear a page from one of our great power competitors' playbooks, if we all do our jobs well, this is a competition we can win without fighting. A goal that should be written on all of our hearts. And in closing, I wanted to express some gratitude once again to Stephanie, your team, and the great honor, true honor it has been to me. Secondly, those giants that came before us, learn more about them. Their stories are so inspirational. Share them with those share with your colleagues. The Goethals, the Edisons, the Doolittles, and of course, they imagine tomorrow, and the challenge for all of us, let's imagining a better tomorrow. Those technology superheroes are not only towering examples, but a great inspiration to us all. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you, our colleagues in the science, technology, and engineering communities. Thank you for answering that clarion call. We know that you're doing your part in visioning, inventing, building a better future, doing your part to ensure that for the foreseeable future, that our military will be able to perform its auspicious role in protecting and defending this great nation, the values upon which it was built, and most importantly, the lives of the American people. Thank you again for all you do.